We have a new sponsor of ROAS. You Are Not Your ROAS is happy to welcome our primary sponsor, retention.com. If you love money, you're going to love retention.com. You'll hear more about them later in a bit. Until then, enjoy this episode of You're Not Your ROAS exclusively on the Triple Whale Network.
I came to New York without a job. I stayed on my cousin's couch and I just interviewed and talked to anybody that I could. And it took about 3 months of just talking to everyone, getting a lot of rejections. And I landed at this agency that had just gotten Dos Equis and was starting to build this up. This was in December for the April launch. And it was just lucky that I was able to do it just as my savings was running out.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of You Are Not Your ROAS. We brought in the cheese slinger, the man with the plan, Greg Lorenzo. Greg, how are you, my friend?
What's going on? Excited to talk all things cheese, mermaid parties, ROAS, marketing, whatever you need. I'm here to discuss.
All the things. Yeah, man, let's get started. So you have a really awesome job at what's new gig? I always mess up the name.
Stockeld Dreamery.
Stockeld Dreamery.
Swedish.
Sweet. That's where. Oh, that makes tons of sense. Yeah. You got the merch and everything. One, your website's amazing. I absolutely love it. It's such a really cool, fun take on not only a blend of user aesthetic, but just a different take on UI, and it really stops you in your tracks, but it also doesn't confuse you. And I think that's a really hard balance to strike. So kudos on you guys there. But before we dive into the value add segment, let's learn a little bit about Greg. Give me kind of the too long didn't read it. I saw you went to school in Boston and then Australia as well.
Melbourne, Australia.
Let's go, Australia.
Very conservative upbringing. You don't have to know much about growing up in West Hartford or Boston College, except in my first job, I thought it would be appropriate to wear pleated khakis and an oversized button-down shirt.
Let's go.
Within the first week of working in New York City, the owner of the company that I was at wanted to fire me because he felt the guy just didn't get it. I had read one of those books, Don't Dress for the Job You Have, Dress for the Job You Aspire to. And so my dad being a doctor and going to work every day in pleated khakis, I was like, certainly the CMO of a big agency wears fancy clothes. So luckily, at the agency I was at, we had a costumer, who took me around Manhattan, got me some cool clothes, some jeans, some uncollared shirts. We threw away anything with pleats, and I was able to salvage the job, and get introduced to New York. And you can imagine kind of a small town, simple man. If you ever been to the Box in New York City, Randy Weiner, quite a character. A semblance of the wildest acts from around the world performing. I don't think we can even say at 2 or 3 in the morning. That was my introduction to New York City. We hired the best of the Box and went on the road with Dos Equis, creating the most interesting show in the world, a series of acts that the most interesting man himself is said to have picked out. And so, this little small town kid with pleated khakis, being introduced to the roadies and the characters of the Box in all sorts of weird towns around the country. That was my introduction to marketing, and the launch of Dos Equis, which was right place, right time, with the most interesting man, and really hopefully set me on a series of interesting events in my career that eventually ended up in cheese.
That's so interesting. Also, one of my favorite marketing campaigns. You guys nailed that. That's really cool. So what did the roadshow consist of?
Yeah, so of course an MC, starting with Jim Moore, eventually the Party Now guy who always wears all white, not Andrew Dice Clay.
Great reference.
I'm going to have to come back to it, but essentially an MC and 5 or 6 acts. We would play in clubs like the Highline Ballroom, to down across the South and West, of the wildest, most unusual acts sanctioned by the most interesting man. It was an introduction to Dos Equis. I think the core of it was no one had heard of Dos Equis outside of Austin and San Antonio back in 2006. Am I dating myself? And Heineken USA had some dollars to spend outside of the core of Heineken Light Amstel. Didn't think too much of it, didn't put too many folks on it, which was fantastic. And just let a few agencies do their thing. The most interesting man was born on Cinco de Mayo of 2007. We just had enough money for Texas and California marketing, to the point that 2007 for Halloween, I was in the world of the most interesting man. I dressed up for a party at the Limelight back before it turned into a mall. And no one knew who I was because the marketing hadn't gotten to New York yet. Are you George Steinbrenner? Like, why are you dressed up in white? But, obviously a year or two later, it did so well that we expanded nationally. And we're able to, the big thing there was everyone at the time was all about beautiful women, sports. That's how you relate to beer. The most interesting man, his thing, he wasn't a shill. So he wasn't going to say, always drink Dos Equis. He was just going to say, I drink a lot of things, do a lot of things, but when I'm drinking beer, Dos Equis is nice. And I think that understated note was refreshing in the beer landscape at the time, and helped propel us far beyond our media spend to national attention. And then, obviously the campaign got a life of its own for many years until the most interesting man was sent off into space. But yeah, a terrific campaign, a terrific intro into marketing from the start of my career.
Yeah, man, talk about a cool first act. How'd you land the gig? Besides the pleated khakis and fantastically oversized collared shirt.
I was working at the Boston Beer Company, makers of Sam Adams, Twisted Tea, and loved the company, loved the passion that Jim Koch brought every day. One of my favorite things about that company was the FU rule, pushed by Jim Koch, essentially saying anybody can tell anyone else to go screw themselves as long as there's a valid reason behind it. The big thing there was encouraging transparency. I think they saw the biggest enemy to success as doing what's right to avoid confrontation, to not hurt any feelings. So after every interaction, every sales call, there was always a moment where we recapped all the good and the bad. I think that helped propel that company further than others at the time, because there was no time to waste on pleasantries. It was a very high energy company that was very transparent. So I love that energy, but ultimately, I was on the sales side, and I don't think I was ever made for straight sales. Just this idea of a goal every month to hit, and then you do that, and then you have a new goal, and it's just like, okay, I want something that builds on each other. I like the idea of campaigns. So I came to New York without a job. I stayed on my cousin's couch, and I just interviewed and talked to anybody that I could. And it took about 3 months of just talking to everyone, getting a lot of rejections, and I landed at this agency that had just gotten Dos Equis and was starting to build this up. This was in December for the April launch, and it was just lucky that I was able to do it just as my savings was running out.
Look at that, the classic NYC story. I love New York City, but I would burn up there. I'm a big fan of it, but if you can make it there, that's like life on hard mode. And if you make it there, it's amazing.
Yeah. Being in Boston and having everything close up around 1:30, I actually, when I moved to New York and the closing time for nightlife was 4 a.m., 5 or 6 if you find the right places, I thought it was my duty to be there until close, because I was lucky enough to be in a city that had such late nights. It certainly cuts into the weekend though when you're out Friday, Saturday until
it's a lot.
4 a.m. So I had to have a bit of a reset after a few years. Not even drinking, just feeling that I had to be out talking with folks. So yes, lots of activity all day and night. But of course, the folks that find success know how to moderate. So it took a little while and figured it out.
That's such a cool story. Yeah, man, there's nothing like the antidote of youth, right? I look at a beer now, I'm 37, I look at a beer now and I'm hungover for 3 days, and I remember back in my heyday, I used to run, and we would actually go. So in Division 1, it's kind of weird. Like you can't practice 7 days a week, but you can choose what day off is the day off in the week. And so our coach didn't want people to go out partying. So on Sundays would be like our super long run. Like we'd hit like 10 or 13 miles or something like that. And so me and my buddy, who were kind of like the two best runners on the team, we'd just go rage with like the soccer team and go park in the parking lot at like 6:30. Our teammates and try and grab like a quick 30-minute nap or something. Our teammates come knock on the window, and then we're cranking out these 13-mile runs, like just oozing whiskey and vodka. It just smells like a bar and nothing of it. Like I couldn't even look at a 13-mile run with a, 17-week rest period or something. So that's so interesting.
I think beers have gotten a lot heavier as well. So
fair play. Yeah. So maybe it's not us, right? Yeah. We get off our lawn kind of stuff. Give us good stuff back. What was one of your favorite cities?
Never underestimate the fun of Indianapolis. It sounds like kind of a small town, especially. Oh, no way.
I went to IU.
Yeah. Have you done open to close at Kilroy's?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we did a little 500. Like, yeah, I pushed the Bloomington party scene to the limits for sure.
There's just so much good energy there. And this is coming from someone. So working with Captain Morgan, one of my jobs was to manage the captain. We went around to every single city, University of Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, Madison's certainly a good time.
Madison's fantastic. I almost went there.
However, I would say both Bloomington and like even Broad Ripple, Indianapolis.
Oh my gosh.
Small enough.
Throwbacks.
Of course you can say, Vegas, New Orleans, et cetera, but that is so predictable. I think, the cool thing sometimes about ending up in Indianapolis and having such a great time is you don't expect it. So it's even more fun because it takes you by surprise. It comes from the people, a great energy, an openness, a push to have fun, an element of not caring enough to try new things. So, in traveling around, I think honestly, probably about, I would say 55 cities is about what I'm at. Indianapolis, right? Indiana as a whole, right up there near the top. Yeah,
that's amazing. Now Bloomington's beautiful, man. Bloomington, the campus is beautiful. It's a big nursing school, so a bunch of beautiful women, and it's just a vibe there, man. It's a really, Bloomington.
The stone that's where they mine the stone for quarry, the Empire State
limestone.
Building. So beautiful limestone for
it's like the fourth or fifth biggest limestone producer in the world. There's a huge quarry just maybe not even an hour from my campus proper. And that's why the buildings are all so gorgeous too, because it's so easy just to build with limestone because they just quarry it from just 2 feet away. That's so funny. How random. Bloomington, Indiana. Shout out Kilroy's. Let's go. It's incredible. I went back actually, when did I go back? 5 or 6 years. I haven't been back in a while. But it's crazy. The campus it's totally different. Like there's not high rises, but like big condos now on Kirkwood and the beautiful campus.
But you still see Mark Cuban upstairs at Kilroy Sport jamming in that like corner booth. I've seen him multiple times.
He loves it.
It's chilling.
There was a kind of lore around the campus where he went out one night and basically just bought all everybody drinks and then end up spending a crap ton of money, cut up the credit card and stuff. Yeah, he's a bit of a mythical figure in terms of IU lore. That's amazing.
He's a character. I love him because he doesn't, and when I say don't care, it's that he doesn't feel he has to stick to any existing norms. He cares very much about many things by not caring about what everyone else thinks he should care about. And that's, totally. The entrepreneurial magic. Yeah.
100%. And the intentionality which he lives his life is really cool because it kind of encapsulates what you're talking about, where he just has a goal and he crushes it and he does it. He also is kind of a good guy, man. He's doing some really cool stuff and prescriptions.
Oh my goodness.
Just an overall good
incredible.
Dude. Yeah. Just overall good. That's how he made his money, was streaming essentially.
Broadcast.com.
Yeah, IU
We're
basketball,
old enough to
and then
use broadcast.com.
Yes, oh my gosh,
of course.
Love it. How interesting. Okay, cool. So you've done your circuit, you slung some alcohol. Now what? What's the next move for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, For me, and I pass no judgment on anyone, but the alcohol industry for me, and I put so much effort into it, a ton of all-nighters. And what I found was I was working so hard to convert people, in my case, from Bacardi to Captain Morgan, or from, some sort of scotch to Lagavulin. And it just didn't do it for me in terms of satisfying larger need. It certainly does it for some people, and that's great for them. And so I think for me, the only message is finding something that if you're going to put a lot of effort into it, you feel good about, and you're excited to tell your kids about. And that was a difficult transition when you're really focused in one thing, in beer and alcohol. I spent 10 years, a lot of parties, a lot of fun, the jobs that people want to hire you for. Oh my goodness, you can you can run this Proximo account, you can run this Anheuser-Busch account. It's like, no. And so a gentleman who was running an agency that dealt more with tech companies, Google and Spotify, to help with their global strategy, gave me a chance and saw that my skills were transferable into, if I can help alcohol brands, I can certainly help tech brands. And that was my break to break away from alcohol a lot, and was able to get a really good background into just general brand strategy. And, with Spotify, we help them grow their overall audio strategy globally. With Google, we help them think about how to get more creative thinking out of their partners. And that opened the door for me to enter better for you food, which I started first as a consultant, and I literally just was able to sneak into Expo West through a maple syrup company, was able to walk the booths. I was one of those people that as a supplier, we all get annoyed by pitching my services when really the suppliers, want to be pitching their products to retailers. Got a lot of no's, but luckily you got 3,000 different brands. You only need a few.
You only need one yes.
Few yeses. And one of the first big yeses was Super Coffee. They were growing really quickly and wanted to get a better sense. My specialty that was building up was behavioral economics, how consumers think, what consumers are buying, what and why. And they had a lot of questions because they were a terrific brand started by college students, which they initially thought would be consumed by other college students, who, especially athletes who had morning workouts and then needed to stay awake during class. And what they found was there were millions of soccer moms buying them, and they're like, what is going on? Like, an athlete drink, and of course plenty of student athletes as well, but we were able to get deeper into that. And as it turned out, a product with 200 milligrams of caffeine, some healthy fats, a good source of protein, and a resealable lid was absolutely perfect for busy parents who didn't even have enough time to make breakfast for themselves. Could just grab a Super Coffee, get the energy, maybe a quick bar as well. Reseal it, put it in their car, put it in their gym bag, whatever the case. And those people also had the money to be able to buy it in bulk. So as I continued to work with Super Coffee amongst other brands, first it was 25% of my time to 50% of my time. Then by 2020, it just, remember talking to Jim, and it was like, look, there's so much to do. We have so much potential. Would this make sense to come on full time? And so, started just on the insight side, and then gradually took more and more on until I took over digital, creative, and marketing, and tried to play a role in helping to grow the business, as well as writing the Series C presentation to raise the $100 million to bring the company to the next level. So it was an absolutely incredible experience. I'm forever grateful for the Super Coffee brothers for giving me that opportunity. After 3 years there, I was just absolutely hooked within the industry. And one of the things that they do a lot of that I got into was really advising and investing in other brands, and as soon as you're learning the knowledge, passing it on to others. So
That's beautiful.
at this point, maybe we've collected too many, but there are about 8 brands that I advise and invest in now, and there's so many advantages to having that knowledge, even if you're, some could call it giving away your skills for for free. What you get back in understanding and perspective of the industry is so valuable to do your own job well. And I think one of the funny things is that as a $100 million brand advising a lot of $2 to $5 million brands from Super Coffee, there's a certain amount of knowledge that I was giving. I think now jumping into Stockeld, where we're brand new in the U.S. We're established in Sweden, but so much to do. Now the advisor has become the learner for some of the 0 to 1 moves that I just had never had experience with. Securing your first distributor, getting some of the contacts for getting into retail, and so it's definitely been a symbiotic relationship. And thankful for the connections and partnerships I've made there. To be able to, not only give knowledge, but get a whole bunch of knowledge in return as we scale up Stockeld.
Man, what a wild ride. Powerful Super Coffee, fantastic product. I'm with you on that, man. I think that there's definitely, to your point, a certain balance of, because I try and do that a little bit as well, where, on the come up, like all these people were helping me, so it's really nice to kind of pay it back. But then there's also that balance of like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And like the inbound DMs start to just kind of rise and rise and rise. But I love that, of just really helping everybody out whenever you can, as much as you can. 'Cause what's crazy is something, especially because you're so well versed in this space, something might not be like revelatory for you, of like this big light bulb moment, but then you just, give 15 or 20 minutes of your time to some nice guy or gal that has questions. And then that could be like the most impactful meeting of their life/year or something like that. So I think it's beautiful to pay that forward.
You also learn things better when you teach them, right?
So the Feynman method. Yeah. The Feynman method. And I think that, wow, really well put there. That's such a good place to plant a flag, because there is so much. So there's this concept called beginner's mind, and ultimately it's always being able to take yourself back to the beginning, especially when you start to absorb all this expert knowledge, where that becomes your kind of operating level, right? And so being able to go back to that beginning, kind of a perfect example is like the Super Copy, right? Like have some theses, but then when the data changes, your theses should change. And so it's, instead of just this athlete, you discover this huge TAM, which is arguably probably better, of rich soccer moms, right? Like these affluent women have way more disposable income. They have a way more kind of vigorous job to be done, where they don't have time to be messing around. Where a college student, it's great and it's an enhancement, whereas with these soccer moms, it's almost like a necessity. And so being able to pivot into these different markets shows not only your awesome understanding of, probing your customers for insights, but also the ability to make a narrative to sell it to the leadership, because that's also half the battle, right? Like you can have this amazing idea and initiative, but if you can't wrap it in data and make that narrative exciting to leadership, there's really no point, because you're never going to get the resources to deploy those campaigns.
Yeah, and I think TAM is a very important topic that I've learned a lot on over the past few years. So to bring it all back together, I think what excited me about Super Coffee that I could never get within alcohol was that there was a bigger cause here. There's a lot of sugar in beverage, and here's an option that's zero sugar. It's the same thing that has me excited about Stockeld, where we know dairy cheese is delicious. We know real meat is delicious. We also know that if we're going to get anywhere close to our emissions goals, we can't do it just through vehicles. We need to find a way to balance. Again, I'm not for the type of take away all the cheese, take away all the meat. No. We just need to find a way to balance the great great meat, great cheese, great milks, not always relying on animals. And I think we made a ton of progress in milks and meats. Cheese is the place, maybe the most difficult, but where there's the most potential. But when we think about TAM, we jumped into the coffee industry and we're like, ready to drink coffee, $4 billion industry. Boom.
Yeah.
The world is ours. We're going after all of that $4 billion. I think Tyler Ricks, who worked at Pepsi for many years, is now the CEO of Super Coffee, brought up a really good point. At Pepsi, when you see an end cap of Pepsi, you don't see it all of Pepsi Zero or Diet Pepsi. You generally see 3/4 of Pepsi and about a quarter of the zero sugar stuff. And when we looked into these industries more, that lined up with almost every industry except the functional ones. So you do find in energy drinks now, it's up to about 1/3 of the market is zero sugar versus 2/3. But for soda and honestly for coffee, the reality of the situation is it takes 10, 20 years in order to convert people from sugar to non-sugar. And a brand with a moderate budget, any brand that's only not only, but is able to make 10 to 100 million, they certainly don't have enough to convert a whole generation from sugar to no sugar. So, what you're really going after is the TAM of folks who, for whatever reason, it's already available. As you think of older folks, when you're young, your metabolism is going strong, you don't notice it. There's not as much of a motivation to switch away from sugar. Just like, in the cheese side, I know I'm having two conversations at once, but it's similar in the sense of, you don't care as much as whatever is the most delicious, or
give me that craft singles. Let's go.
or it doesn't affect your system as much. But so I think the net here is have to be realistic in your business about the TAM of your actual product and real with yourself that you're not always going after the big TAM of the category. If you have a better for you product or a plant-based product, oftentimes that's only 5 to 25% of the actual market is the TAM, and you're going to expand that pie, but you're not going to expand that pie in 2 years. You're going to expand that pie. Oatly was
crazy.
They rebranded in 2012, so it's been 10 years, but they've certainly been around for many years before that, and it took that long until finally, I think it was this year, maybe last year, that it was announced as the default milk option in places like Blue Bottle or Stumptown, to go with oat milk. But for 10, 15 years, let's say 20 years, they had to fight to just win over the folks who were already open to it and then slowly build that market. So I think that can help a lot with calculations. I think a lot of folks maybe have gotten burned with being over aggressive with their TAM or thinking that
every breathing human is it every person the whole category? In the world? I don't think so.
And as long, I don't know whether we're already into the next segment, but with that, the number of SKUs that you can have within that TAM that are repeatable. So essentially, if we have a cream cheese and then we have 5 flavors of cream cheese, there's very little incrementality after that 3rd or 4th flavor, unless you get into the low fat or the high protein. Unless you're changing the functionality to have more than a few SKUs, given that TAMs are less than you think they are, you're just going to be cannibalizing yourself, I think, has been another key lesson in this. So
I love that. For people that are not hip to it, sorry for using acronyms, but TAM is total addressable market. So basically the people that can buy from. The other thing that I've find really interesting, and then I'm going to get to the last question, the main segment, and then we'll get to the reason why the people bought the ticket and the value add stuff and getting all the nerdy stuff with Stockeld. But another really interesting vector is, because I agree with you, those generational people are essentially ensconced and they're very, very hard to move. And they're very expensive, and they can be very, not judgmental, but very, they just like what they like. So definitely carving those other people out. But I think what's also really interesting, especially for me, like in terms of super coffee, is you can take people that are not consuming and then move them into a consumer. And those people are usually a lot easier if you can nail your branding. Getting people from non-consumption to consumption is usually an easier road than getting people to change their current buying behaviors. So I think that's something that is also really interesting. Okay, last question. What is the nicest thing someone has done for you?
I mean, I'm a product of 1,000 nice things that people have done for me. Wow. I think my my wife agreeing to marry me has
Love
been
that.
the greatest move in my life. I mean, now we have a son, and being able to be in CPG with high demands and very lean teams is, at least for me, impossible without an incredible partner
Beautiful.
to meet me halfway or more through all the challenges. And by the way, she works full time and more as well, but is so supportive of the passion that I have, that the team has for all of these great causes, whether it's lowering sugar or whether it's bringing better plant-based products to the market. So yes, my wife definitely goes above and beyond and is the the core figure that allows me to be me.
I love that. You can never go wrong with a wife. Shout out, Miss Lorenzo. Let's go. Okay, let's get into the value add segment. Give us the elevator pitch for Stockeld.
Absolutely. So we are, after 4 years of research and development in Sweden, the best tasting plant-based cheese now coming to the U.S. Full of tang, using dairy processes, no nuts and no soy, cultured legumes, and starting with cream cheese and then jumping into a few other segments, both in food service and retail. The brand is fun. The idea is worry about deliciousness first. And of course, with great plant-based products comes, benefits for the planet, benefits for consumers as well, with pricing being lower than nut-based cheeses. And, if we can give you great taste and you have some fun along the way, we've done our job.
I love it. How long have you been there?
Just a few months now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dude, amazing. Let's
just
go.
started. So essentially with Super Coffee, it was a terrific experience to help a company go from about 25 million to close to 100 million in sales. Yeah. And I realized that there was really a gap in my knowledge to help for that 0 to 1 move. And so for me, this is the best of both worlds, because the brand has been established in Sweden already. It's sold in the biggest grocery stores as well as in food service and restaurants. So there's a proven system. And they realize, just to give you an idea, the total number of grocery doors in Sweden is 2,500. Total number of doors in the U.S. is 100,000. And expanding in Europe. Europe is not like one thing. You don't just expand in Europe. It's a series of small countries. And even in bigger countries like Germany, there are different regions that you have to expand in at different times. So the U.S. offered the most opportunity. I'm here with the CEO, at the head of supply, and we're bringing on a head of sales in the U.S. soon as well. So the four of us are going 0 to 1 with Stockeld in the U.S. So it's an incredible opportunity to take this awesome, this first product in cream cheese, some other products soon, and introduce it at the very beginning. At first, we're starting with the top bagel shops. And then expanding into retail in the fall as we ramp up U.S. production.
Retention.com is not only just sponsoring your Not Your ROAS, Retention.com is here to help you make more monies from your email campaigns. They're an amazing resource for marketers, and you can see all their podcasts and resources right on their site, including the 5 fundamental flows you need to grow. Go check it out at Retention.com or in the link below. Now back to the show.
And so, tofu is subsidized by the government. It's incredibly cheap. We're never going to be able to compete in price with tofu.
Right.
However, when it comes to tang, protein, that cream cheese flavor, I mean, we made multiple people cry at Expo West because since they had switched to non-dairy, they'd never tasted something with so much flavor.
Yep.
So obviously, in knowing TAM, we're going to go after the first 5% of the market that's vegan. Make sure that we do great with that customer that already has met us at not wanting dairy, and then as we talked about before, expand the pie to the flexitarian and new customers who are interested just in great tasting cheese. We have so much to say as a company about the broken food system and the need for great plant-based cheese and other products that don't rely on animals. And we know that at the end of the day, there are not that many Americans that want to hear about that. The Americans want to hear about great products. They want to try delicious things. You should tell your friends about awesome things. So we have a bold brand in bright orange. We have a great tasting product. We're going to be doing some fun stunts. We're going to start there and meet people with a great product. And then, of course, for those that want to listen or spread the cause, they can. There's no pressure on our end. We know if a bunch of people are buying us, that's plenty enough without having to get on a soapbox. But certainly for the industry, we take an active part in that conversation. But we're leading with taste as every brand should.
I really love that take, because all the other stuff is really cool, but for me, I'm with you, especially in specific with the American market. Like I have this joke kind of about Tesla. Like when you start to get like the P85Ds, like the fancy Teslas, you're into like serious price points. You know what I mean? You're talking about 120, 150K for a car. It's not nothing. But that person that buys the Tesla isn't necessarily like, they can get a Ferrari, you can get a Beamer, whatever you want. They're not necessarily buying the Tesla because they want to save the earth. That's just more of a perk, right? They want the Tesla car, and they don't want to be seen like the douche in the Ferrari, in the red Ferrari. And so I love that you're leading with taste first, and then all these other ancillary benefits, whether it be to the environment, et cetera, is really kind of building behind that. But the spearhead is taste, and I think that's a really, really cool tact.
We also feel there's kind of this mono brand of plant-based with, you can picture it, a leaf and have nice flowy text, and it's just so plain for us. Like, have some fun. And that's also what we want to make sure we're holding ourselves to a standard of a bit more excitement in the brand, and how can we continue to be bold. Because as your shirt says, obviously, you can't be selling the water side. It has to be the lifestyle side, and that's what Liquid Death has done an amazing job of. Death Wish as well, and of course, Black Rifle.
Wow, talk about a rocket ship, huh?
A merch and content brand that happens to sell coffee. I wouldn't recommend anybody at this point in 2023 trying to sell coffee on the internet. I think you sell lifestyle on the internet, and maybe you have some coffee on the side.
Man, it's so beautifully put. I always think of that as well in terms of supplements, where a lot of supplement brands, I think, are really lifestyle brands at their core, right? Like they're selling the aspiration, they're selling the lifestyle if you use this product. And that's a little bit kind of going back full circle, the OG liquor play, right? Alcohol and bevy. Like you have the pretty girls, you have the party, you have the most interesting man, this good-looking old guy that seemingly is rich, et cetera, et cetera. So I like that you're pulling in all of your expertise across everything. Are you?
It's a job, in case anybody wants to have it, to just go to clubs and buy tables with whatever bottle you're paying me. I used to do it for Stoli Elite. We used to do it for Kettle. Invite celebrities to your table and just be seen with a certain product. It's not necessarily a high-paying job. You certainly get to live a good life. Very high burnout rate, but absolutely, Grey Goose is no better in taste than Kettle, than any of the others, but they spent the most in getting in every important club at every important table. And so, of course, people who order Goose by default for no other reason than the lifestyle. Yeah, it's 95% lifestyle, 5% taste.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that, man.
same with energy brands for the most part.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, you look at kind of what Prime is doing and stuff like that. I think they're a little different though, because they're essentially just going to your point of like lifestyle. This is almost just monetizing the distribution that Logan Paul and KSI have, where it's just like they're just everywhere. It's really interesting. Okay.
KSI, do you know where he was, what brand he had partnered with before Prime?
No.
He actually had his own product. It was with G Fuel.
Interesting.
It wasn't him fully. It was him owning one line. G Fuel's teamed up with a lot of different influencers, but it didn't give him the voice. There wasn't necessarily the right interest in mind to fully own it.
Yep.
I don't want to get cliche here with Emma Chamberlain's and Mr. Beast's and Jake Paul's of the world, but there's a whole do some work with a company that works with large influencers and stars and is looking through the supermarket kind of one item at a time of what can we essentially lifestyle and what can we white label and treat as a lifestyle brand. And so I would say it's mid-range. It's about to be kind of too late to get in, but I would predict over the next 3 or 4 years, a huge influx of, anyone who has 10 million or more followers on any of these channels, starting their own white labeled coffee, energy, kids brand, et cetera, based on, and honestly, it's easier from a marketing perspective to start with those 10 million followers than it is to start at 0 and try and work with these influencers for these super inflated rates. So, it's a smart business model until it's not. And it's not when, it's a critical mass is reached and then, every influencer has an energy drink and it's over. But certainly these first movers, Mr. Beast and Logan Paul, Logan or Jake?
It's Logan, yeah.
Logan are winning.
Yeah.
And of note, not just on D2C or digitally. I think very quickly they figured out they needed the Walmart and Target partnerships because, those Walmart has 4,500 stores. Target has, I think, 2,000 stores. That's just how you're going to get to be $100 million a year revenue brand. It's just too hard through digital, especially shipping liquid around.
Yeah. Oh man, so well put. And you're right. So I used to work at an agency, and I was lucky enough to be able to do some stuff with Oprah. And Oprah's like the pinnacle, to be fair, but like having that little celebrity card with the distribution and the name recognition and the face recognition, it really is a cheat code. The other thing that I love that you said there is penetrating retail, because that was going to be my next question. Are you guys going retail only? Are you guys going to dabble in D2C? Like, is it hard to ship this? Because is it perishable or no?
It is absolutely perishable.
Okay, so that starts to add wrinkles.
I would say one of the companies that I advise and invest in, Actual Veggies, I think has done it really well. So they have products that can either be frozen for a longer shelf life or refrigerated. Certainly they have a website where you can order direct. However, just the infrastructure in this company, FedEx Cold does not get it right a lot of the time, up to 10-15% of orders. And so trying to do it on your own with a cold product is very, very difficult. It would have to be the ultimate cold product. But instead what they've done is to go through marketplaces, and they have a burger made with all veggies. Marketplaces like Purple Carrot, Hungry Root, and Butcher Box even now having non-meat options. And in those cases, they don't have to do the marketing. They
Sure.
just have to be able to supply it at the right price. They don't have to deal with, they can ship it all to one
Yeah.
location. And it's made their business, break even,
Yeah.
at the least, even with being in retail. And, I think that one of the things we learned at Super Coffee, there's no shortage of number voodoo you can do when it comes
Yeah.
to analyzing the ROAS, talking about LTV, kind of amortizing the cost of the advertising and saying, oh, well, that's helping retail. But when you look at the bottom line, it is incredibly difficult in either cold chain or liquid to
Premix.
actually break even doing it yourself. I think powders are much better, powders
Yep.
and supplements. Certainly anything that's light. Uh,
Yep.
but that forces you to make a decision. And I'm all of you, like, you can do anything, you can't do everything. And that
Yeah.
decision is essentially, you're going to focus your resources on a digital front, or you're going to focus on retail. And if you focus on retail, you're dealing with distributors, dealing with each of these retailers. Let's say, just for everyone out there, when you get into a big box retailer, that's just the beginning. It's not like when they
Yes.
say, oh, you're going to be in 1,500 stores. Just so everyone knows, you're going to be in 1,000 stores, and then for whatever reason, there are 500 stores where there are issues, and you have to iron out those issues for a month. And then, why is it in the wrong place? And then there's some logistical challenges. And I'm not singling out any one retailer. This is just the nature of having stores across the country. So that takes a tremendous amount of resources. Then, it's not like you can just distribute your product, especially in beverage, through one company, even through the AB network. Fantastic network. That means it's a network of 400 individual distributors that you have to have relationships with. You need to know the owner and let them know how they're doing. So with all that focus, that's why retail takes up. So if you're going to lose money, which many food and beverage companies do,
Yeah.
lose it on one thing and invest in one thing. I think
Yep.
with Super Coffee, we realized it made sense to invest that in retail,
Yep.
and to scale back the digital side just to the loyalists and subscriptions and light touch with some new consumers, but not go overboard in trying to invest in a lot of new customers that at the end of the day, it was costing us more than we could bring in. And so, for Stockeld, I think as well, definitely try the actual veggies route, where as many of the built-in marketplaces that make sense for us will certainly provide, especially with some of the other cheese products that make sense for burgers, pizza, etc. And then the main focus for us to do this right is going to be retail. But certainly some of the companies that advise do focus on D2C. However, more and more have been switching to kind of a D2C brand page that then fulfills through Amazon, so that they don't have to worry as much about a lot of the logistics. And those platforms, man, add up. I mean, of course, you want to consolidate your platforms and just have some one thing like Triple Whale. But I highly recommend for D2C managers, at least every half, if not every year, really doing a full review of everything you're paying money on. You're going to be surprised how much those numbers are a little less than what you thought they would be when you factor in those million paper cuts. And I think that was a worthwhile exercise we did at Super Coffee, and it really allowed us to focus and be great in less things.
I think that's what a valuable lesson. That's one of the things I can't remember who I was talking to about that, but that to me is a bit of the siren song for a lot of not only just D2C, but just in specific businesses when you want to bolt on like 78 channels at once. Well, like, find a channel market fit and really hammer that channel as best as you can, and then maybe add like a secondary or tertiary channel. But when I see people trying to go on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all these things, it's just it gets not only overwhelming, it feels a little bit dilutive to what you're actually trying to do. And I think it's brilliant advice. I mean, Liquid Death, again, one of my big brand muses, they don't even sell water. They don't sell Liquid Death anymore on their site. They're fully retail now. Because the to your point, like when it's pre-mixed or semi-heavy or cold storage, or whenever you have some semblance of a wrinkle outside of like powders or, to your point, like supplements that are unmixed, but so essentially powders or pills, you start to get into some really big logistical headwinds that those start to become pretty spicy line items on the P&L. When you're talking about reconciling things, you're like, wait a second, so we paid how much for this customer and they're only ever going to pay X amount for us? So I think the retail is definitely, and the retail seems a bit like almost like a snowball or like an exponential, right? Like if you can finally get into like a Whole Foods or Royal Blue Market or kind of one of these prestige type of stores, then things kind of can start to fall over. But it's definitely, retail it's a really interesting beast, but every single either energy drink, or essentially I'll categorize them as pre-mixed or cold storage or any kind of logistical quirk. Everybody is kind of, to your point, starting on D2C to get some semblance of a foothold, but at the end of the day, that's just to brand build, and the whole end game is to become a purely retail play, because it's just so much easier to ship freight than it is pick and pack and et cetera, especially again when you're adding in these extra cost drivers, whether again be cold storage or really heavy weight. On that note, do you guys have any, are you guys Amazon curious, or are you sticking straight retail right now?
We will be approaching Amazon Fresh. It won't be in
that's
the,
interesting,
because of the
cold storage. Yeah.
But Amazon Fresh works well through Whole Foods, and with our product, I think, again, in the frame of making sure we have a product that's great for customers, we were very aggressive with avoiding any sort of mold, which certainly with plant-based cheese, there have been challenges. Not the good type of mold that you see in like a blue cheese, the bad type. And so we were very aggressive on the preservatives we used. We will have a new preservative by the time it hits retail that's approved by the natural channel. And so once we have that and we'll be able to get into Whole Foods, then Amazon Fresh works well as connected to that. But it is brilliant. Amazon Fresh works more like a retailer where you have to find the buyer. It's not just like a marketplace where you sign up by any means.
Sure.
And I think you mentioned the snowball effect. That's certainly true in that if you find stories of success, even in local stores, even in New York City, of like, look at how our rate week to week increased. You certainly can put together compelling stories for regional chains. I think, though, one of the things I'm telling my brands is it's almost too easy to jump into the next retailer, and each one requires so many resources to get right that the toughest decision is saying no or pushing back for a year, because the buyers are motivated to just bring in a bunch of new products. They don't care whether they last for a year or two, but it can wipe you out if you put all this effort to something that just kind of sits on shelf. Because if you get into a Target, for example, it's not cheap if you're doing 2 units per store per week and they say, hey, get it up to 4 units per store per week. It's not just like a button you can press. You have to invest sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in off-shelf display and certain promos, working through Neptune, which is a coupon provider to actually get it up. So as a small brand, that's just not possible. You want to make sure you have some of the base infrastructure, some of the regional chains, even local chains within a city, before you're expanding beyond that.
That's brilliant, man. What a CPG masterclass. What a fun journey, Greg. That's awesome. Ended up slanging cheese. I love that, man. That is a really, oh man, so awesome. So awesome. You ready for some rapid fire?
Let's go.
All right, here we go. TikTok, overrated, underrated?
It's underrated if you know what you're doing. If you're keeping it to one focus, one style, the algorithm can pick up that style, find an audience. If you're just trying to do a bit of everything with no strategy, you'll be wasting your time.
Love that. Expo West, overrated, underrated? It's like the Super Bowl for CPG people. The like laudatory, like praise that this thing gets is insane to me, because I'm not in the CPG world, and like Expo West is supposed to be the Super Bowl. So I want to hear it from the CPG master. Overrated, underrated, Expo West.
I'm gonna actually say it's underrated because
Let's
we
go.
weren't even producing in the U.S. And we went just with our product and a basic sign, and we got to be in front of everyone: Whole Foods, Central Market,
Amazing.
Sprouts, all these big digital retailers. They all came by our booth. They tried it. The amount of opportunity that we got from those 3 days was out of control, kind of unequaled by anything else. And from a simple expo, we were pretty much set with contacts for the year. So if you have a great product, that is the place to be. It might seem crazy to set up a booth. A lot of people will say it's not worth it, but at least for us, it was insanely good.
Let's go. Powerful Expo West. Boston, overrated, underrated.
It is way overrated to live. Great place to visit, few fun bars, but it is a town, not a city.
It's so expensive too. I didn't realize that, man. They tax you for every single thing. Like, yeah, it's
come to New York for a real city experience.
Concur. Melbourne, overrated, underrated.
Underrated. Everyone thinks about Sydney. Oh, the Bay Bridge, the Opera House. Melbourne is the place to live. Great markets, great bars, great attitude. Melbourne is the Bloomington of Australia.
Let's go. Let's go. You can't go wrong with B-Town in Australia. I love it. Attending university, overrated, underrated.
Way overrated. Oh my goodness. I'm becoming more and more of a fan of learning beyond the university. I think the best thing that it can teach you to do is communicate. You need, if you're not going to university, you need to find a way to concisely get across your thoughts. The simpler the words, the better. You don't need a big vocabulary. But if you can figure out a way to communicate concisely, then the amount that you can learn, from on the job, from experimenting, from taking those, $200,000 that you would spend, and attempting a business or, meeting a bunch of cool people. I think there are many other ways. Again, it depends what type of person you are. I think university is incredible if you have a very focused goal of, I want to be in finance. I need to learn specific math skills. I need to learn specific science skills. But if you're kind of not sure, it's just like going to law school. Don't just sign up because you figure it's a good thing to do. But weigh your options before just jumping in. So yes, I think the biggest underrated thing is that break year. Don't be afraid to take that break and think about, is university where I want to go, or are there other avenues? Not just on autopilot.
Incredible response. Speaking of autopilot, go ahead.
I have one big underrated, overrated that I want to talk about in this industry, and it's stock options.
Oh gosh.
I don't know whether you're allowed to bring your own underrated, overrated, but I'm a huge fan that they're way overrated, especially in today's economy. Essentially, and at Super Coffee, we were lucky enough to work with, I think 8 or 9 of the buy team, the folks who were able to sell for $1.7 billion to Keurig Dr. Pepper, an incredible team. So much respect for them. And when you work with these folks, you think that's the norm. In reality, especially as investors have tightened their wallets, options are great. They're very much a lottery ticket. They're very much a 1 in 1,000, 1 in a 10,000.
I would go higher than that.
That they're going to cash in. I think you need to make sure you're working for enough to cover the bills. And if you are going to take a cut in comp because there's someone that you're really excited about working with, not because you're going to get 10,000 options or whatnot. That's value right there. I've worked for free before for the right people, but never just for some option that there's a very low chance of coming true.
So I did another episode with James Camp. You guys should go listen to that because I have the exact same view, man. I'm at the end of the day, really what happens is the only people that get rich in startups are founders. It just is what it is. And no shade, no like, but for like quick 10-second explainer. So usually what happens when you come to a company, Greg hires me. Greg says, hey, I'll give you a $100,000 and then I'll give you $50,000 in stock options. An option is essentially a contract to buy those shares. A lot of times it's going to be in common stock. There's usually different types of stock. Preferred stock is rich people stock. Common stock is poor people stock. The challenge with common stock is, one, you're going to be the last to pay out. Two, if there is something called a secondary. So the challenge a lot of times with these stock options is you're a paper millionaire because you don't people have to remember for every seller there has to be a buyer. And so if you have no way to liquidate your stock, in common stock is essentially basically an IPO or an acquisition, you're kind of just sitting there, and it becomes almost, I joke about it, it's almost like tipping, where they just put the onus on you or on the customer versus you. And so, yeah, I'm a super cash flow guy. The other thing is, especially if you haven't experienced this before, you have no clue who's on the cap table. You have no clue what the debt facilities are. There's all these things that make it super, super overcomplicated. And I've seen so many people really get disillusioned by that because, to your point, not only is it a lottery ticket, but again, it only matters till you sell it. And unless you are already at a public company or something like that, where once you do get awarded the stock options and you exercise them, that's another thing, is you'll usually exercise the stock options. So there will be something called a strike price, and that strike price, say it's $1. If you give me 50,000 options, that means I have to pay $50,000 to exercise those options of my own money. On top of, you pay the spread between anyways, I'm getting into the weeds. Too long, didn't read, listen to Greg. Cash flow is king. Equity is awesome, but equity is more so, again, for me, if you're making that bet, you either need to be A, in the C-suite, B, have preferred stock so you can participate in some semblance of a secondary, because usually secondaries are only investors and C-suite. And then make sure there's some semblance of a liquidity event on the horizon, because if not, you're just going to get underpaid, and then the founders will just constantly tell you how much money your stock's worth to quell your anxiety of being undercompensated. So couldn't agree with you more.
There are a million reasons to work at a startup. It's just the options are usually not in the top 10. There's so much that you can learn. Those options are usually a long shot. Hundreds of companies cash out each year, but there are probably 100,000 companies that are offering those options.
And again, this is also kind of quote unquote part of comp. And so I can underpay you under market because, look, comp is a function of not only salary, but equity. And so I can kind of do some fuzzy math to make you think that you're actually getting paid a lot, when in reality you can be under market. So that was the first person that came with their own overrated, underrated, but it was a stellar one. I love it. Chat GPT, overrated, underrated.
It's underrated still because I know we're just getting started.
Yeah.
And the amount that I've seen as an assistant, not as a replacement,
like an augmentation,
I think can be incredibly helpful across a variety of industries. And we know that this is just going to be the worst it will ever be. Like, it's only going one direction from here.
So well put.
Yeah.
Can't ignore it. Totally agree with you. I think this is going to be, I was talking to Aaron Ordorf over at Recart, and we were jamming on this. And I think this is going to be this generation's kind of defining technology. Like, for us, it was kind of the internet, Facebook newsfeed in specific for D2C marketers. Like, there was just a Cambrian experience, man. Like, the world literally changed. I think if you reject AI right now, you're going to turn into a Luddite, and you're going to fall behind people that embrace it.
There's something very interesting with why Google Glass failed. I think Google Glass was incredible technology, and it's still used in factory settings. It was just too many new things all at once. All of a sudden, people were wearing these weird glasses, it had the camera going, it had the internet. And so, the same thing is happening with self-driving cars. Cars can self-drive now, but that's too much for people to comprehend. So they're taking little steps at a time. Oh, assisted parking, assisted lane change, blind spots, etc. There's already so much AI, even within the G Suite. I'll be writing emails. Obviously Google will finish my sentences. I'll say, hey, this thing attached. It will say, oh, excuse me, sir, you didn't attach anything yet. That it's not a question of if, it's obviously it's just how quickly we add more and more AI. Same with how quickly the cars do more and more of the driving until all of a sudden you look and you're like, oh, this is fully automated. There's really no stopping. It's just a matter of finding the right balance of new features to add that the public can take at once. And that was the biggest downfall of Google Glass. It was just too much at once.
Stockeld, if I gave you an unlimited checkbook, who are you collabing with? Who's the number one person you want repping that brand?
Man, I should come with a strong. You know who I want? He's a chef out of Brooklyn, Ben Gigi. He has the biggest energy. I think he's going to blow up. He actually specializes in challah and Jewish fare, but in general, I think he has a type of energy that could bring Stockeld across the country with. He's the next great spokesperson. Follow Ben Gigi on Instagram.
Let's go.
Very creative, full of energy, and exactly the boldness and fun that we want with a brand.
I love that.
So I know that's kind of obscure, but we want to grow with the people who are growing, on their own. We don't just want to go to the predictable.
I love that. Ben Gigi, if you're listening to this, shoot Greg an email. Let's get you some cheese. Favorite meal and why?
Oh my goodness. It has to be pizza from Giuliana's. It's my local spot in Brooklyn. They have a coal oven. It's grandfathered in. You can't put them in anymore because it's a fire hazard. Formerly the Grimaldi spot. Grimaldi's moved up the street. Patsy Grimaldi, who had sold Grimaldi's, came back in and created Giuliana's. And absolutely the best pizza in the city, right in Dumbo.
Love that. Favorite place to travel to and why?
Can't really beat Cap Ferrat. You fly into Nice and you drive about a half hour east, and one of the most peaceful and relaxing places to just get away. Very close to Menton, to Monaco, even a half hour from Italy. So that probably is on the high end, and then the low end. Let's go back to Bloomington.
Let's go.
Bloomington. Those are the New York, the kind of lowbrow, highbrow.
Look at this range. This thing's going from east to that's amazing. The Beantown, Southern Indiana. I love it. Okay, last question and we'll wrap up. If you got dinner with 3 people dead or alive, obviously there'll be some Stockeld cheese on the table, fictional or non-fictional. Who's getting an invite? So you're sitting at a 4-person table. You're sitting at the head. You get to invite 3 people. Who do you invite?
First person would have to be, is Bill Gates too controversial? Is he still, is he canceled?
I'm a big Bill Gates guy. He was, if you know anything about Bill Gates, not to go on a diatribe, but he was actually this villain. He was a super shrewd operator when he was running Microsoft, but he's done so much stuff in Africa and stuff like that, and it just gets kind of wrapped up in some of the weirdo conspiracy theories. But I think he's Mount Rushmore of CEOs, founders. So he's built an absolute machine.
I think because he can look so far beyond the business of anything into how can we solve real problems in the world. There's so much for me to learn. Next person, definitely Macklemore.
Let's go.
I think he has an incredibly creative voice. Obviously been through a lot of substance challenges, come out the other side with a beautiful family, and definitely anybody, as I learned from my first job, who travels the world and lives to tell about it, has a very unique perspective on things. Should I throw in? It would have to be Oprah.
Let's go.
I mean, another
The queen.
trailblazer. And these are, I know I'm going to wake up tomorrow and think of 10 other folks, but first of all, you can't have too many of men at the table. I probably shouldn't have chosen 2 men to start, but also her story is absolutely incredible. Through and through what a traditional talk show to kind of inspiring just tens of millions of people.
World icon.
So much to learn there.
That's a great pick.
Macklemore, Oprah, and Bill Gates.
That's a strong dinner, man. That's why, and you'll definitely with those 2 there, you're not going to have to pick up the check. So you bish bash bosh, you figured it out. It's amazing.
Maybe I'll bring Melinda Gates instead. She probably knows everything Bill Gates does and has a more unique perspective. Sorry, Bill. You need to learn more from people who don't look like me. So, yeah.
I love that. Greg, man, this has been amazing. Just like I said, just an absolute masterclass in CPG. Your journey from super copy, from most interesting man in the world to running the marketing for Stockeld. Like what an incredible ascension. How can people follow you? How can they connect with you? How can they get Stockeld this time of year, my friend?
That's right. Stockeld is available in New York City. Going to be launching at Zucker's next month, and currently available in Kozars and Ground Support. Will be in retail in the fall, but of course, follow me on LinkedIn, Greg Lorenzo, and of course, follow Stockeld Dreamery on Instagram and LinkedIn for all the latest updates, all the drops of the new stores that we're going to be in. Super thankful to Sarosh, the CEO, for bringing me on board, along with the rest of the team, and excited to get started.
Yeah, the brand is just with it. It's beautiful, man. I just love the quirky, exciting, engaging. Like you guys really nailed the branding there. I love it.
Appreciate it.
What else we got? If you want to get more involved in Triple Whale, we are triplewhale.com. We have all the analytics, attribution, all the awesomeness to help you make more money on your Shopify store. We also have a fantastic newsletter that goes out every Tuesday, Thursday called Whale Mail. You can subscribe right at triplewhale.com/whalemail. And then we also have another sister show on the Triple Whale Network called Ad Spin that is co-hosted with me and Ashwin Malwani, where we nerd out about all the latest, greatest in D2C. That's all the plugs I got, man. Greg, this is amazing. If you're ever in Austin, man, give me a shout. We'll grab a drink and relive the glory days in Bloomington.
Let's go.
Love
Great
it, man.
city. Appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Greg. Greg Lorenzo, go buy some cheese. Go follow him on LinkedIn. Go check out Stockeld's branding. Go follow Stockeld on the Instas.
Stockeld.com.
Let's go. Amazing. Greg, thank you so much, brother. Thanks for all the patience. This was fantastic. You absolutely slayed it. That's another ROAS in the books, folks. Oh, make sure if you want to see our pretty faces, you can actually watch this on the YouTubes. That's just youtube.com/triplewhale. And then if you are an OG like me and you appreciate the auditory nectar, you can grab all the podcasts at your favorite podcaster, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music. I use Pocket Cast. You know the drill, people. Greg, thanks so much, brother. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.